Welcome back. It's me, Andy B, the Dizzy Busy PT, speaking out for all those who are too busy to be dizzy so that we can take your vertigo to vertigon. Hey, excited to be here today. We're going to be kind of finishing up the series on how to figure out why you are spinning. Our goal is to help you figure out why you are spinning as efficiently as possible, meaning as quickly as possible. And what I've learned after treating this since the year 2000, working with thousands and thousands of people, I have learned that the big three is key in figuring out why someone is dizzy. So if you've listened to the last few videos, you've learned what the first one is, the first big part of the big key to learning why you're dizzy. You know what that is? Well, if you study back, it is taking a video of your eyes while you are having a spinning attack. So that's the first thing. Now, I had a viewer comment that, hey, I took a video while I was spinning. I gave it to my doctor, and the doctor really didn't have any comments about it, didn't really say anything about it. And so I encouraged that viewer to hang in there, and that taking a video of your eyes during a spinning attack, you see nystagmus. Sometimes there are some healthcare providers who see that and they just don't know what to do with it. They don't know what it means. So if you need help finding a healthcare provider who understands what it means, reach out to me. Send out a message in the comments section, and I'll be happy to help try to find you someone who can help you out with that. But let's say, you're trying to video your eyes and you just can't seem to do it. You don't have anybody around when you're having a spinning attack. How else can you figure out why you are spinning? Well, here come the next two. Now, before we get to the next two, I just want to point out, please remember that when you're listening to these videos, these videos cannot be used for your own personal medical advice, okay? I just don't know what everyone's story is, and it's just impossible to give good sound medical advice to individuals through making YouTube videos. However, this information can be used just for education, just to learn, so that you can take this valuable information and then go share it with your friends, share it with your healthcare providers, and maybe use it to get help in that manner. But please don't just take this information alone and use it for your own medical diagnoses. So with that being said, let's get to the next big two. And I want to say, this information is not only valuable for people who have not yet been diagnosed with dizziness, but this information is very valuable for people who have what's called 3PD, or persistent postural perceptual dizziness, okay? Chronic dizziness. This information can help you win the battle against that type of dizziness. So the next big two, here they are. The first one we'll talk about is triggers. What is the trigger to your dizziness? We have our patients fill out something called the Dizziness Handicap Inventory when they come into our dizzy clinic. And when I look at the history form, the very first thing I go to is my trigger questions. Do they get dizzy when they roll over in bed? Do they get dizzy when they tilt their head back? Okay, triggers help us know what potential causes of vertigo could be. Now, I want to clarify. A trigger is something that provokes the attack. A trigger brings on the spinning spell. There's a difference between triggering an attack and making an attack worse. So if there's no dizziness to start and the person moves in a certain way, such as bending over, tilting their head back, laying down in bed, rolling over in bed, those would be triggers to the attack of dizziness. If that is happening to an individual, we need to know that. That is way more valuable than asking, what do you mean by dizzy, per se? Okay, so triggers are huge. Do any of your dizzy spells get worse when you lay down, roll over, bend over, tilt your head back, sit up from laying down, or stand up from sitting? Okay, so keep that in mind. Triggers. That's the second of the big three. The third of the big three is timing. If you hold perfectly still and do not move, how long does the intense sensation last? So if you don't move, you hold perfectly still, how long does the intense sensation last? Does it last seconds? minutes, or hours. Why does this matter? Okay, there are four major syndromes that we break vertigo down into. The first is acute vestibular syndrome. Acute vestibular syndrome, there is no trigger. The person is just there and suddenly they start to have this intense spinning sensation. Okay, it might begin with sensations of being off balance, but then build over a few hours into this spinning. There's no trigger. It'll be exacerbated, meaning when they move, it'll be worse, but there's no movement that triggers that spell. The timing of acute vestibular syndrome is up to 3 days of intense spinning. No matter what you do, if you hold perfectly still and don't move, you will spin for days. So that's how we know, is the person in acute vestibular syndrome? And if they are, we look at some of the most common causes of acute vestibular syndrome, which is vestibular neuritis and labyrinthitis. Okay, and then other more concerning causes can be more central causes like stroke. Okay, so you take triggers, you take timing, and man, if you can add video in on those, now we're really getting 3 powerful tools to understand if a person was in or is in acute vestibular syndrome. Let's go to the next one, triggered episodic vestibular syndrome. Triggered episodic vestibular syndrome is exactly what the name entails. It's triggered, meaning the person lays down, rolls over in bed, bends over, tilts their head back, and they spin like a top. And if they hold perfectly still and don't move, we get the timing. The duration of the intense part of the spin is 1 minute or less. Now, many people will say they spin for minutes to hours, but it's not minutes to hours of the intense spinning. They may have nausea and vomiting and yucky feelings like that that can last minutes to hours. But what we're talking about is the intense spinning sensation. If they hold perfectly still and don't move, usually goes away in a minute or less. That's triggered episodic vestibular syndrome. Then there's spontaneous episodic vestibular syndrome. Spontaneous episodic vestibular syndrome, very common causes of that are migraines, Meniere's, TIAs, just to name a few. These individuals will not have a trigger. They'll just be holding perfectly still, not be moving, and suddenly, boom, start to spin. So there's no trigger. Again, it'll be exacerbated if they move when they're having the attack. It'll become worse, but the movement didn't cause the attack. And the duration of spontaneous episodic vestibular syndrome is usually minutes to hours. So hopefully you can see how triggers and timing help us break down which syndrome the person might be in. And if you can add in the power of the video, 3 key elements, the big 3 is key to really help us figure out why a person is dizzy. The last syndrome is chronic vestibular syndrome. These are people dealing with chronic dizziness that's been going on for months to years. Most common one is 3PD. And so if patients can know if they're in chronic vestibular syndrome and they're dizzy, what's the trigger? Is there a trigger? How long does the intense part last? And grab a video while they're in their intense attack, we can know if the person is kind of in the syndrome of 3PD or if they're having a new vestibular attack that's making the syndrome worse. So, hopefully you understand the power of the big 3 being key. If you can learn that information, take this very valuable information with you to see your doctor, to talk with your healthcare providers. I believe that these key elements will help you get help very fast, very thorough, so that you can get help and so that you can go and spin no more. I hope you found this information helpful today, talking about the big 3 being key. I'm trying to share what I have learned makes the biggest difference in my patients' lives. Coming in the future, I'm going to talk about when the Epley maneuver fails. How many maneuvers should you try before you say, maybe I have another problem, or maybe this isn't the right maneuver if I have benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. So we're going to talk about how to know if you're doing the right maneuver for BPPV, how many times you should try the Epley maneuver, and then we're going to talk about common mistakes made when doing the Epley maneuver on your own at home. So stay tuned, join us for the next video for that. Also, if you find this information helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you can hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to build a community of people who are growing and learning how to battle dizziness together. And I'd love it to be a community where people can find comfort, courage, and good, valuable information that they can take and make themselves better and make their friends and loved ones around them better. So please join me for our next few videos, and we look forward to seeing you soon.